All right, welcome back. We're going to keep going with a podcast setup of Miss McClune and I discussing things, but we are going to do it a little bit differently, try to mix in some videos because people were asking for that, and also just a little bit less with like reading, I guess. We don't want to do another novel. Maybe we will by the end of the year, but I don't think so. I think I'm kind of noveled out right now. We are starting a new unit. It's focused on the United States and how it's interacting with the rest of the world. And one thing that did come out of Fever that I really wanted to spend more time on at the time, but like we didn't because it was not in the focus of like what we were doing, looking at pandemics and epidemics, was this refugee population coming from the island of Santo Domingo. And that island goes on to become Haiti during a revolution that happens in the late 1700s and is kind of like wrapped up by like the early 1800s. I don't know a ton about it personally, other than like it happened. I know like the slaves win their like freedom and they form their first country. But it turned out, as like Ms. McClune and I were having side conversations while reading Fever, that she knew a ton about this from like more of a world history background than I have. So she's going to kind of take over for this point, and I'm going to just like passively ask questions and like have historical wonderings. So Ms. McLean, go ahead and take it away.
All right. So when we were talking about the Santo Domingo refugees, you initially think when you think of refugees, you're thinking of a poor population. But what's interesting is that the refugees in Philadelphia at that time were actually rich white landowners that were trying to escape this slave revolt or revolution in Haiti at the time. But I think it's important to kind of see how America's revolution literally leads to Haiti's revolution and causes these landowners to leave Haiti and go to Philadelphia. So it's kind of like a revolutionary wave with the ideas kind of created with the Declaration of Independence by Thomas Jefferson. They state, we hold these truths to be self-evident that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Now they state all of these amazing ideas and how they're going to like form this new nation of these 13 colonies. But what I think is really fascinating and interesting, and I think we've discussed multiple times in classes, we come up with these amazing ideas of this great country, and then we still have slaves that do not have these unalienable rights, that aren't being treated as equal. And in both of our classes, that was a very common thread that we mentioned in class. So there's this hypocrisy happening during the American Revolution. But what's important to note is with these ideas that also came from the Enlightenment, other countries are hearing about these ideas of equality and life, liberty, and happiness, and they also want to take part in it. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the French Revolution. Now, I know you know a lot about the French Revolution as well. I mean, you could spend an entire college course
like
on it.
it's in a one could argue more significant and like the span of history going forward than the American Revolution. But for the purposes of this like discussion, and then also just like in the context of this class, like we're going to just kind of like bridge them together and then move forward, because our discussion is still like the United States interacting with the rest of the world. And so the United States like inspires this French Revolution, but what it becomes is something far different as it gets going.
Yeah, so the French Revolution, the most simplistic way we can kind of describe it is that France has a kind of social hierarchy that's called the first estate, second estate, and third estate. And the first estate is the clergy, the second estate is the nobility, and then the third estate is literally everyone else. And as issues usually crop up, the people being heavily taxed during this time are the third estate, which is literally everyone else. So those people are kind of feeling taken advantage of. They don't feel like their government's representing them. Similar trends to the American Revolution. And they hear about this amazing Declaration of Rights happening in the U.S. And they say, hey, that doesn't just have to happen in these colonies. We could have these rights as well and overthrow our government, which they eventually do. So they create this thing called the Declaration of Rights of Man. And they state that they have natural, unalienable, and sacred rights of man, that men are born and remain free and equal in rights, and they have the rights of liberty, property, security, and resistance to oppression. Very similar to what we see in the Declaration of Independence and in our Bill of Rights.
Yeah. So I think like the biggest distinction, but I guess like also at the same time, like a little bit of a similarity, is that these are both unique. That when we have colonists declaring themselves independent of England that are more than 3,000 miles away from England and forming their own country, that's a unique circumstance. That's never happened before. And when it happens in 1776, it's a big deal. In 1789, when the French Revolution is beginning, it's happening just in France. Like the people in France are trying to actively overthrow their government, and it basically descends into like a civil war, more so than just like a revolution in and of itself of like this group of people is saying we don't want to be ruled by this group of people anymore. Like there's lots of different ideas around like what this new French government could or should be.
Yeah, exactly. But I mean, the basics of it is they still believe that no matter what they do going forward, they want the group of people, majority of everyone, to have life, liberty, property, resistance to oppression, and free and equal rights. But what ends up happening is that because the French Revolution happens and they declare these unalienable rights, um, we come into an issue with Haiti. So Haiti is a French colony in the Caribbean. It's basically part of the same island as the Dominican Republic. It's right next to Cuba, Jamaica, and Puerto Rico. So when this information spreads that France is declaring equal rights for everyone and resistance to oppression, um, obviously we're going to see everyone wanting those equal rights. And this pamphlet makes its way to Haiti. So what's important to note is what Haiti is. So Haiti is a French colony that produces sugar. It has 800 sugar plantations, probably one of the richest colonies in the area. It's a richer colony than all of the 13 American colonies combined. But the population is only of 519,000 people. And of that 519,000 people, we have 87% slaves working on French plantations. 8% are white landowners and 5% are freedmen who would have also been some landowners. So that's the makeup of this country or colony at this point in time. And so when they get this pamphlet declaring rights for everyone, the slaves, who are many of them educated, are like, hey, does this apply to us? Like, don't we also have equal rights? Don't we also have the ability to resist oppression? So the French landowners applied to the government of France and say, hey, you need to make sure that it's clear that this does not apply to our 87% of our population of slaves. And the French government said, no, this doesn't apply to them, because at this point, France is also, as you know, really struggling financially, and they need that money from that colony.
So this is like the exact same situation that like, well, seemingly the exact same situation as like these American colonies are facing. Like there's a group of distinct colonies, 13 of them. They all have different backgrounds. They don't really trust each other. Some of them have been super successful by having slavery, and they all agree that they don't want to be ruled by England. They declare themselves independent with this like super famous language. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal. But they still keep slaves because it's something that so many of them are so deeply attached to, that if a few of them want to get rid of it, it's going to upset that whole like relationship of having these 13 colonies. And like, it might be that Virginia and South Carolina form their own country, and like Pennsylvania and Massachusetts are doing their own thing. So they come to these compromises about how they're going to move forward. And this Haitian revolution is like a super similar circumstance. Like there's people in Haiti who are slaves who are like, wait, that should include us too. But because it's such a valuable colony, it's understood that like, wait, maybe we can't quite get rid of slavery yet because we're this struggling country, France. And what happens if we're invaded and we don't have any money and like resources to like fight that back? So like we need to keep slaves in this space.
Yeah, which obviously the Haitians do not agree with, and they end up revolting against the landowners and the slave owners. And the slave owners end up leaving Haiti, and Haiti eventually is able to properly abolish slavery in 1798. They kind of become their own country. But with this whole slave revolution that happens in Haiti, there's a lot of questions that come into contact kind of with the US and what the US is going to do now that this has happened.
Yeah, so like already this whole unit is focused on like how the United States is responding to and shaping what's going on in the rest of the world. And in this case, the United States is in a really weird spot. Like France has helped the United States win its independence from England. France has like been supported by the United States in starting its own revolution, or many people in the United States. And now it's having a rebellion within itself, like this population of people in Haiti, like French people, are declaring themselves independent of this new French government and forming their own country, Haiti. So like which group of people is like the United States going to support? Like the first group of people that got inspiration from them, or like the second group that are getting inspiration from them?
It's a hard line to walk. I mean, either way, you're going to upset a large population of the US. I mean, either you support Haiti in their revolution of these ideas, and then you anger all of the slave owners and in the U.S., or you ignore what's happening in Haiti and you upset literally the abolitionists and anyone who's anti-slavery in the north of the U.S. colonies.
Yeah,
I mean, you can't win.
So, Ms. McLuhan, you were saying that it's not until the Civil War that the United States formally recognizes Haiti as an independent country.
Yeah, 1862, which I think is a strong political stand to take right as they're entering or in the
Right.
middle
It's
of
like it meant that, or it shows us that like those Southern representatives in both the House and the Senate like would have like not ever agreed to that. And so I imagine if you were like taking a history class in 1850, you would look at a map and Haiti wouldn't be labeled Haiti. It would be like Santo Domingo or like a contested French colony or something like that. It wouldn't be declared like its own entity yet.
And what's also interesting is that the US literally goes out of its way to avoid trade with Haiti during this time to up until 1862, really. They're trying to do everything at all costs to kind of ignore having to take much of a stand with it because
Oh
they don't
wow.
want to anger the people there.
So it's like it's also in like a difficult situation like financially, like as it's declaring itself independent, like it doesn't have the support of everybody around it to trade. I do want to note too that like these other islands, Cuba and Jamaica, are like the same story in effect, but just different European rulers. So like Jamaica is an English colony and Cuba is a Spanish colony that we've talked about before, that also falls into this category of being a mostly slave population with a small European population there that's basically ruling over them. And that the indigenous populations in these islands was pretty much eliminated like in the first few years of like European conquest, either by like disease or just like direct violence.
Yeah.
So what we're going to have you responding to in the context of the lesson today is posted on Classroom, but I'll put the link up here too. You have Thomas Jefferson, who is probably the most complicated figure to be talking about this issue because he writes the Declaration of Independence saying that all men are created equal, but he himself is a slave owner. He is regularly going to France throughout the 1700s, late 1700s, up until he's president. So he has like a really unique situation in this space. Like he's advocated for like that direct language of we hold these truths to be self-evident that all men are created equal, but he owns slaves. And then now he's watching this all unfold with France. And then he's writing this letter to someone in France. Ms. McLean, do you want to talk about Lafayette?
Yeah, so Marquis de Lafayette was actually a pretty strong individual in the American Revolution. And if anyone's listened to Hamilton, which I know several of my students have listened to it, he's mentioned frequently and isn't in the play quite a musical quite frequently. So he fights in the American Revolution. He's a French aristocrat, and then he goes over to France to go fight for the French Revolution. He goes on to help lead the French Revolution. So he's kind of hopping around trying to help out with these revolutions. And Jefferson in this letter basically states like, good job on like the French Revolution. However, you have an issue with your colonies. And I'm going to try to, I don't know what you're going to do about that issue. He's basically saying, I have no idea what you're going to do about it. Maybe you can try to like do what Jamaica's doing, where they're coming up with a form of indentured servitude. But basically, Jefferson is again having this issue where he totally agrees with these ideas of enlightenment and life, liberty, and pursuit of property and equal and alienable rights. But then on the other hand, there's this economic side that they're very practical with, where they're like, we have to still like think about our economy. So it's interesting to see how he kind of handles that in this primary source.
Yeah. So you've got a letter from Jefferson to Marquis de Lafayette and 4 questions about it, basically focused on like Jefferson's hypocrisy. We'll see going forward that the United States throughout this unit is in this position quite frequently through the 19th century, and then certainly into the 20th and 21st century as well, like saying one thing, speaking to high ideals and the things that like the United States purports to really want, but simultaneously realizing that maybe getting the things that you really want isn't going to be very easy, or in fact the thing you really want. Like if all these people have freedom, like what exactly does that mean for you? So as always, help us out with feedback. I think we'll keep this video format rolling for you guys until someone says, please stop. Right. Thanks.